welcome back everyone. I've got some new cards to jump into and I've got my caffeine, so we're ready to go. Let's jump into it. Alright, first card to jump into today, I'm going to start with the white cards. So we have Ancestral Katana. It's a 2-mana card, one of which must be white. It is an artifact equipment that whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you may pay 1 colorless mana. If you do, you attach this katana to it. The equipped creature would get +2/+1, and normally it's a 3-mana equip cost. So I definitely think that it's an interesting card. I don't see a lot of situations where your samurai or warrior will be attacking by itself, but and equipments to me are usually fairly slow. So if you meet that condition for 1 mana being able to attach, it's pretty good. But just equipments to me tend to be fairly slow unless they have indestructible or some other ability that allow you to summon something or whatever. So I definitely think it's an interesting card, but we'll have to look at some of the other cards that are coming out before I have an opinion about whether or not we're going to see a lot of it. The next card I want to talk about is, I'm going to try this name out again, Ao the Dawn Sky. So it's a legendary creature, 5-mana card, 2 of which must be white. And it is a flying vigilance creature. It's a 5/4. And its effect is that when he dies, you choose one of the effects, just like the other dragon spirits that when they die, you choose an effect. The 2 options you have here is that you can look at the top 7 cards of your library, put any number of non-land permanent cards with total mana value of 4 or less from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest will go in the bottom of your library in a random order. And then the other effect is that you can put 2 +1/+1 counters on each permanent you control that's a creature or vehicle. So I definitely don't see it really being with vehicles, but I definitely think that this is a really good card. Being able to, just for me thinking ninjas and samurais, that as long as they're 4 mana or less, which for the most part, as far as I can tell, they will be, I can definitely see you just flooding the board with some samurai warriors, which I think is awesome. But as for the vehicle situation, I could see the 2 +1/+1 counters on each of your creatures. That's really cool. Might as well include vehicles if vehicles may be big in the set. So I think for Flying and Vigilance 5/4, definitely think it's a good card, and its effect of being able to either flood the board if you don't already have board control, or be able to establish board dominance if you have a bunch of weak creatures out who need to be buffed. I can definitely see the value of this card. So moving on to our next card is the Imperial Subduer. So a 3-mana card, 1 of which must be white, and this card is a 3/2 samurai, and whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, tap target creature you don't control. Definitely see that going in a white deck. White's all about tapping other people's creatures, and then they used to have cards that would just destroy tapped creatures. I definitely think that definitely combos well with those cards, and of course with the last set having a lot of blue cards that also combo with that, I can definitely see it going maybe a blue-white deck. So I definitely think that this is a good card. We can talk more about it when we see it kind of combo with the other stuff that come out in the set, but even without this next set coming out, this card already works well with the Innistrad that came out last, so I think it's a good card overall. Moving on to our next one is Spirited Companion, which is an adorable card. It is a 2-mana card, 1 of which must be white. It is a 1/1, and when he enters the battlefield, you draw a card. Cute little 2-mana 1/1 draw card. It's a cute card, doesn't really combo well with samurai cards, but I definitely see it getting some play, at least novelly, because it's just a cute card. So, alright, that moves us over to our blue color cards. I'm going to start with Covert Technician, which is a 3-mana card, 1 of which must be blue. This is a human ninja 2/4 with a ninjutsu 2-mana effect, 1 of which must be blue. And its other ability is that whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you may put an artifact card with mana value less than or equal to that damage from your hand onto the battlefield, which for the most part, just without buffs at all, would be 2. At least if you ninjutsu him out, he would be 2, unless you have something that is already buffing your ninjas, at which case he would come in, he'd already be dealing combat damage, because ninjutsu again, you're swapping out a creature that wasn't blocked, so it's automatic damage that's happening. So if you're somehow playing it and buffing it all at the same time, then you're already getting that effect to pop off, which is great. I definitely believe that this was intended to be in a vehicle deck though, and so that makes me think that they want your ninjas to combo with vehicles, and I'm not 100% that that's how this is going to work out. So I'm more curious to see now what other cards they have that combo with both the vehicles and the ninjas at the same time without slowing down the overall theme of your deck, because focusing on 2 things isn't a terrible idea, but I know a lot of people would like to have part of their deck just entirely meant for responses, and a vehicle that doesn't count as a ninja also means that you're taking away from your ninja buffing abilities when you draw it. So a lot of stuff going on there. Definitely interested to see the other cards in the set before we get a real evaluation of how that card is going to work. Let's talk about the next card, which is Snare Prototype, a 1-mana card. It requires it to be a blue mana. It is an artifact, though, that if you tap it and you tap an untapped artifact or creature you control, you add a colorless mana to your mana pool. It also has a channel ability, which again means you discard it, pay a mana cost, and you get an effect. So this one is for 5 mana, one of which must be blue. You discard this card, and the owner of target non-land permanent puts it on the top or bottom of their library. So that is the first effect is okay. You're tapping it, and you have to tap another artifact or creature you control to add a colorless mana to your mana pool. I definitely don't see that being as useful as most cards that you run, where you just tap it and you get mana. Especially if it requires you to cost a mana. First thought to me is Soul Ring, which is you tap any mana, and it produces you 2 colorless mana each time you tap it. So I definitely don't think it's fast in that sense at all. But the channel effect, I could see it being okay if it was at lower mana cost. So my overall opinion of this card, not really excited about it, but could be that I'm overlooking some combo. Definitely interested to see some more cards that are in the set. Maybe it combos well with a card from another set, and I'm just not thinking of it. My initial reaction just from seeing it today, not psyched about it. Our next card I want to talk about is, I'm going to try to pronounce this card, Tamayo Reality Architect. It is a 3-mana card, one of which must be blue. And it is a wizard. So it is a 2/3 on its own. And whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then it also has an additional effect where if you tap X amount of mana and 1 white mana, so it's definitely meant to be in a white-blue deck, you can return a land you control to its owner's hand. Return target artifact or enchantment card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, but you activate this only as a sorcery. So I definitely like the fact that it has an ability that combos with its first ability, so they both work really well together. So you pop off that first effect, return a land you control to your hand, and it's almost, so that's supposed to be a cost, and then you can get something from your graveyard to your hand. I like that. And then immediately, because a card that's not a creature, a non-creature permanent, just got returned to its owner's hand, you can immediately go ahead and draw a card. You can only do that once per turn, but it's just really cool that both those combo really well together. And I definitely think that the effect makes sense for the color too, because the white and the blue are going to combo well with the returning stuff to the hand and drawing cards. I think white always needs more card draw, so comboing white and blue together, blue which has a ton of card draw, is always a great way to go because they mesh really well together. White's biggest issue has always been it doesn't have a lot of card draw. So I like this card. Moving on to our next card is Tamayo's Completion, a 4-mana card, one of which must be blue. It's an enchantment aura which has flash. The enchantment, you enchant an artifact, creature, or a planeswalker, and the ability is that whenever this enters the battlefield, you tap the enchanted permanent, and if it's an equipment, you unattach it. And enchanted permanent loses all abilities and does not untap during its controller's untap step. A very powerful card to use against a planeswalker. No matter how many loyalty they have, all of their abilities are just gone. So I definitely see that comboing really well against the planeswalkers, especially these awesome planeswalkers that they're introducing. So I can definitely see that being really good. Definitely see it being enchanted to a creature. As for it being used on an artifact, I'm assuming the idea is to use this against a vehicle. But again, I don't really know how well the vehicles are going to do this set. I already don't really like vehicles, so my guess is that this sees play against planeswalkers. I think 4 mana to tap a creature and stop its abilities from activating, not very impressive, but against the planeswalker I could see it being really good. So we'll see if it has any play there. It being flash is really good too because it immediately stops something from happening. So I like that. But yeah, overall, meh on the card. So the last card I want to talk about is the Thousand Face Shadow in terms of the blue cards that we're talking about today. So it's a 1-mana card, so it must be blue. It is a human ninja, so it's a 1/1, and as almost all the ninjas that we're seeing here, if not all of them that we're going to see in the set, it has ninjutsu, 4 mana, 2 of which must be blue, and it has flying. Whenever he enters the battlefield from your hand, if it's attacking, create a token that's a copy of another attacking creature, and the token enters the battlefield tapped and attacking. So that's really good. It by itself is not a very strong card. It has flying, which makes all cards more interesting. For 1 mana 1/1 with flying, that's good. But the ninjutsu makes it to where it's a 4 mana card instead of the 1 mana it should be. but for that 4 mana, for the additional 3 you're getting, it gets to automatically deal its 1 damage, and it is entering the battlefield from your hand as an attacking creature, so you get to go ahead and pop off that other ability of creating a token copy of something else. The only thing that concerns me is that a lot of the ninjas are low cost, so I don't know what cards you'd be copying right off the top of my head. If you're just building a ninja deck because you love Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, you want to build a whole ninja deck. But in terms of blue cards, I can definitely see it comboing really well with other blue cards. There are a lot of big cards out there, so I definitely see it comboing well with blue cards, don't get me wrong. But for an additional 3 mana to get a copy of another card, you also have to have had a creature that was attacking that you would rather have replaced. Because again, this is replacing that creature. So you're replacing one of your attacking creatures that already was not being blocked with a 1/1 flying. So whatever you're copying needs to be worth that 3 mana and the loss of that creature, at least for that turn. So just things to consider. So I guess overall, I'm not really sure how I feel about that card. I'm not personally excited about it. I love the ninjas, but this one I'm not 100% on. So moving on to black cards. First one we're going to talk about for the black cards is the Biting Palm Ninja. A 3 mana, one of which must be black card. It is a 3/3 with a ninjutsu of 3 mana, one of which must be black. When he enters the battlefield, he enters with a menace counter on it. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you may remove a menace counter from it. And when you do, that player reveals their hand and you choose a non-land card from it and you exile that card. Not bad. It definitely meshes well with black cards that we've seen before. This is... The only issue I have with this card is that it is the first, and it won't be the only one we go over today, but it is the first ninja that is a black card that we've seen. So my thought on this is that it fits well with a black deck. I wonder if it fits well with a ninja deck though. So interested to see how that works out. Then we have the next one is our other ninja that came out with the black cards, which is I'm going to try this name out again. Dakuchi Shadow Walker. It is a 6 mana card, 2 of which must be black, and is a 5/5 Ogre Ninja, which I think is epic. It is 4 mana ninjutsu as its only ability. So it really is just meant to, instead of paying the 6 mana cost to get it out, it's really just meant to be a 4 mana, I just dealt you 5 damage that you can't stop, which is just a fantastic, I love the card. I don't really think it's worth the 6 mana, but I don't think it's meant to be played for 6 mana. I think you're meant to ninjutsu it out with one of the cards that you already have on the board. So I love the card. And it at least is another ninja that combos with the first ninja, just because you have 2 ninjas. I like having ninjas, but in the black cards, this is the only other ninja that they've shown us for the black cards. They've been pretty light on our just solo black cards. We've got 5 that we're talking about, one of which we've already talked about yesterday. So still though, interested in seeing how it plays. The next card I want to talk about is a sorcery. It is a 5 mana Invoke Despair. 5 of the 5 mana, 4 of them have to be black. So definitely has a lot of devotion to black right off the bat. Its ability is that target opponent sacrifices a creature. If they cannot, then they lose 2 life and you draw a card. And then you repeat the process for an enchantment and a planeswalker. Yeah, I definitely think that this is pretty good against a ninja deck. So I think this is an anti-ninja card, which makes sense. The art in the card definitely is... I mean, I love the art for one, but it just is this cloud that's coming over this futuristic city. I think that it's fantastic. I think the art expresses that it's supposed to be against the ninjas, and I think the effect does a great job at just showing you this is an anti-ninja card. But I also think it works well against any white deck you're playing against, almost any blue deck you're playing against. So I think it's a great card, and I think it almost works well against any green deck. Well, against a few green decks. It really depends on what you're playing against. But ninjas, white and blue decks, this goes against. I love it. The last card is Lethal Exploit, which is a 2 mana, one of which must be black. It is an instant card that target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn, and it gets an additional -1/-1 until the end of turn for each modified creature you control as you cast this spell. Just as another reminder, since today this is the first modified card, referring to modified cards that we're talking about. Modified just means anything that has an equipment on it, any aura that's attached to something, any counters that are on something, something that it's equipped to or attached to is a modified creature. So just keep that in mind. And I think that this is a pretty good card. I think that it relies a lot on that modification, but 2 mana -2/2 I guess isn't bad. I just feel like there are better cards you could run. So you're pretty much playing this to hopefully kill something or get through your attacks. It being an instant, though, I think is what really drives up the value, because then you can do it on your opponent's turn if they're attacking or what have you. So I think that's a really good card. I like it. And the next card I want to talk about, this moves us over to our red cards. So the first card I want to talk about is a 2 mana card, one of which must be red. Aki, the Ember Keeper, is a Goblin Warrior, and whenever it is a 2/1 by itself, and whenever a non-token modified creature you control dies, you create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. 2 mana 2/1's not great, but it is a goblin. The goblins tend not to be very tough, and its ability to create spirit creature tokens, I think, is meant to be. I just feel like this is meant to be in your vehicle deck. That's just my first thought. I don't know if I'd want to run it in a goblin deck, just because it's bringing out spirit tokens, and that really takes away from the goblin's effects. So I definitely understand that's not going to be a more powerful card for the mana cost we're getting, but I definitely think that it's a very specific card. So interested to see if the vehicles do well, or if this card can be used in some other way. Interested to see how it plays regardless of vehicles. The next card I want to talk about is an Aura Enchantment. It is Aki War Paint, which is a 1 mana card. It must be red mana you spend to cast it. It enchants an artifact or a creature. Its ability is that as long as enchanted permanent is a creature, it gets +2/+1. So this goes really well with the other cards that we talked about yesterday that turns your artifacts into creatures, or I guess specifically a card we talked about that does that. So I definitely can see the combo with it attaching to artifacts in that way. If I remember correctly, it turned them into 4/4 creatures, and so this would make it a +6. It would make it a 6/5. So not bad. I'm never a fan of equipments because it forces you to cast an extra amount of mana to get it attached to something. Enchantments come out right out of the gate attached to something. Of course, the downside with these enchantments is once you've attached it to something, it can't reattach to something else. So I think looking at this, since it's only buffing up a card, I'm not thinking it sees a lot of play. But I definitely understand why they released the card in the set. Definitely is trying to make, I think, vehicles and vehicle decks a little bit better. A theme that I'm noticing a lot with these red cards. So again, really would it be interesting to see how those decks work. But I think even in a vehicle deck, even if they do well, I feel like this card is probably a little too slow to run in those decks. But we'll see. The next card I want to talk about is another Goblin. It's a Goblin Artificer. It is a 3 mana, one of which must be red, Scrap Welder. So he's a 3/3 on his own, and if you tap him and sacrifice an artifact that has a mana value of X, you return target artifact card with mana value less than X from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it gains haste until end of turn. Again, definitely a automatic, let me get this vehicle out here kind of deal. And heck, I even think it's a good card for what it does. I just feel like with sacrificing an artifact, you're essentially you're sacrificing an artifact to pull something out of your graveyard, but what you're pulling out has to have a mana value of less than what you sacrifice. So you're downgrading whatever you have on the board already. So I'm thinking this is really meant to pop off specific combos, because it's the only way I can see that really working. Or you're pulling out a vehicle that has less crew requirements. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing how it works. I mean, I know you can pull out artifacts that are not vehicles. Just because it has haste doesn't mean it has to be a creature artifact. So I definitely think that it's a good card in the sense it can also just pull out artifacts just in general. But I really think that because it gives something haste, it's meant to be on a vehicle. So we'll see how that works. The next card is just another cute card I have to talk about, which is Simeon Sling. It's a 1 mana, must be red card, and it is an artifact creature equipment monkey. It is a 1/1. The equipped creature would get +1/+1. It has the ability whenever he or an equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to defending player. And of course, it can reconfigure, because an equipment should be able to, but because it's a creature, they need to call it something different. Whether it's turning into a attached equipment or it's turning into a creature again, it will take 2 mana to configure it, reconfigure it as an equipment. Essentially, to use most of its good effects, it's a 3 mana card, just for all intents and purposes. And for it to only buff something +1/+1 and only deal 1 damage each time it's blocked, I think it's a little slow. So I'll see how it works out. I think it's a cute card though, because I think that a little equipment monkey dressed as a samurai is just adorable. Hopefully it sees play just because I want to see it. Okay, and the last red category card we're going to talk about is the Unstoppable Ogre. It is a 3 mana card, and it is an Ogre Warrior, but it's also an artifact creature. It is a 4/1, and when he enters the battlefield, target creature cannot block this turn. So it's very weak in terms of a card that's supposedly unstoppable. I definitely think I understand it making something not be able to block when it enters the battlefield, and I think that's awesome. But really, its effect for it to fit what I think it should be doing, I think it needs to be less about it entering the battlefield, more of when it declares itself as an attacker. So I think this card in general probably too slow. So we'll see if I'm wrong, but that's my initial impression. And let's move on to the green cards. So the first one is again, I love that they're going for some cute cards, because this right off the bat is, I'd say cute, but when I tell you the card, it's going to seem a bit on the scarier side of cute. It is called the Greater Tanuki. It is a 6 mana, 2 of which must be green, 6/5 with trample. And it's an enchantment creature dog, which I think is adorable. But also it's scary, 6/5 trample. It has channel, so for 3 mana, and of course discarding the card, you get to search your library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. So it's a 3 mana cycle for a land if you need to, but I don't see this card being cycled out as a 6/5 with trample. I totally understand if you're not getting the mana cost or the mana you need to play this card, you would need to take it out. But I just see it as, if it's a green card, I rarely have issues with mana in green decks. So, you know, we'll see if it has that issue. I don't think that you run this in a ninja deck, which I think would be the only reason why you might be having some mana issues. I don't see you running it in that deck, but maybe I'm wrong. A little bit of caffeine. All right, and our next and last card that's on the green category is Kodama of the West Tree. It is a 3 mana, 1 of which must be green. Legendary creature spirit. It is on its own 3/3 with reach. And then modified creatures you control have trample. And whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tab, and then shuffle. Oh my god, I love this card. For 3 mana, I mean, of course it has reach. It's a 3/3. Any creature with reach is good. It being a 3/3 is not impressive, but against other spirit decks, I mean, that's a fantastic ability. It's going to be able to counter against the flying 1/1s or 2/2s you're dealing with. I think that's fantastic. But overall, I think a 3/3 with reach, not impressive. But for 3 mana already, that's an okay card. But then it also gives all your other modified creatures trample. I mean, you're running it in a green deck where you're giving a bunch of things, +1/+1s, or a lot of your enchantment auras are white or they're green. So you're modifying a lot of your cards by running a green deck, just period. Even if it's mono green, you're going to be modifying cards. Giving them all trample in a green deck is just a great ability. And in addition to that, anytime a modified creature that you control deals combat damage, you're essentially just searching your deck for a land, put it on battlefield tapped. It's amazing, especially since this is a 3 mana card, which is not super early game, but a fairly early game card that you're already cycling through your deck, getting lands out. Yeah, I see this card running in any green deck, even if it has nothing to do with Kamigawa Neon Dynasty other than that. So I'd love to see this card. I think it's going to see a lot of play. So far, it's my favorite card I've seen out of all the cards that I've seen. So, and I get that that's like, well, it's a 3/3 with reach. How is that your favorite card? The value. That's why it's my favorite card. The value. So, yeah, I hope it sees a lot of play, because then this is going to make me look really silly. But I'm playing the card if I get it. That's happening. All right, let's talk about some multicolored cards. I haven't talked about this card, and it looks fairly interesting. It is a Human Monk. A 2 mana card, so it has a green mana and a white mana card casting cost. Jukai Naturalist, a 2/2 Human Monk with lifelink, and enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. I mean, it's a cute card. I don't think you're gonna see a lot of it, I think, but we'll see. Multicolored cards are already rough to play, and I think that, I mean, everyone runs multicolored decks, everyone runs them, but I think that the only reason why I see this as a good card is in this set, there are a lot of enchantment creatures now. So I think the purpose of this card is to reduce their cost by their colorless mana of 1. But you essentially, to get the real value off this card, you're running, I mean, you're running a 60 card deck. I mean, you've got to run, most of your creatures got to be enchantment, because most of your deck are not going to be creatures. So it just is a very specific card, and so I don't think it's going to see a lot of play. Even though on the surface it looks like a good card, I think just because of the ratio of your deck, I don't think it sees a lot of play. So let's move on to our artifact cards. That's the only new multicolored card that they showed us for today, so I'm moving on to the artifact cards. There's only one new artifact card to talk about today, and that is Mirror Box. It is a 3-mana card. Of course, it has no devotion to any specific color, so they're all colorless mana to cast it. The artifact card says, the legend rule does not apply to permanents that you control. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1, and each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with the same name as that creature. I want to love this card. I think that this card just, I love throwing the rules up in the air and just doing something new. Being able to play 2 of the same legendary card on the board and you don't have to sacrifice them. I mean, they're legendary for a reason, so you're playing out cards that are probably doing these amazing effects. I mean, we just talked about a legendary green card. You can play 2 of him, and so he's buffing all your modified creatures, you know, giving them all, you can't give them double trample, but each time that they deal any damage, you're getting 2 lands on the battlefield. I mean, there obviously the possibilities are amazing. And it buffs all your legendary creatures. In addition to that, lets them stay on the board a little bit longer. It's not making them sticky, really, but it's giving them a little bit more of a chance to survive a combat. And it buffs all your non-token creatures with the same name. Obviously, if it was buffing your tokens, that would be a much better effect. Don't think they'd release a card for 3 mana that does that, but obviously that would be the ideal effect. I want to like this card. I hope it sees play. I don't think it will, but I want to see it. I think the problem is that digging through for artifacts, I think they've shown a lot of red cards that do that. And so you pretty much need a legendary card that goes well in the red deck you're running. And I think the red deck is primarily vehicle deck. So yeah, I'm not sure. So maybe we'll see. Maybe you guys have some comments on that. We'll see. I want to like it. And then we move on to our lands. We've already talked about one of the lands that they're going to be releasing for the set. They've today shown us 2 more. One of them is the Secluded Courtyard. It is a land that as it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. So normally you tap it for a colorless mana, but you can also tap it to add 1 mana of any color, so long as you spend that mana to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, or activate an ability of a creature or creature card of the chosen type. So this is meant to be for the ninjas. I mean, right off the bat, I can tell that's what this is for. I mean, because they already have a land that does this, aside from that last part of that second ability. So it being able to allow you to activate abilities or creature cards of the chosen type with any color mana, it's meant to pop off your ninjutsu cards. So that I definitely think goes in any ninja deck you run. You play it and you use it. You call ninjas as your creature type, and then you use it to play out your ninjutsus. And it could be any color you need, because there's a lot of ninjutsus that are. We saw some black cards. Maybe this is one of the answers to the fact there's not a lot of black ninja cards. You can run it in your blue-white ninja decks, and you toss in some black ninjas because they're just that awesome, and which they are. And you run this as a way to be able to accommodate for the mana problem for that, because you don't want to run specifically black mana in your deck for 2 or 3 ninja cards that require that mana. I'm definitely interested to see that this gets more play. And the fact that it's not a legendary land means you can run 4 copies of this card. I think you probably do. I think you run 4 copies of this in your ninja deck. So, interested to see how this works out. I definitely think you need some more answers, though, to the mana problem if they're going to keep releasing ninja cards that are going to go into the ninja deck of all different types of mana. But this is a very good first step to that. So, our next one is, I'm going to butcher the name here, but it's Sokenzan Crucible of Defiance. It is a legendary land. You tap it to add a red mana to your mana pool, or you can channel it. So it's a 4 mana, discard this card. And so what you get for that is you create 2 1/1 colorless spirit creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn, and this ability costs 1 mana less, 1 colorless mana less, to activate for each legendary creature you control. Okay, so yeah, definitely meant to combo in with that artifact that goes into the red deck, that goes into the artifact vehicle deck. I'm definitely seeing I think their plan here for what this deck is supposed to be. And this would combo really well with that. You run a bunch of legendary cards in your red vehicle deck, and you stomp your opponent out with these amazing abilities that have amazing value that they can't stop. So I see it. I just don't know if I see it. So we'll see. I want to see if it has play. I want to run a deck full of legendary cards that run out some artifacts that just keep coming out. I want to see it. I do. I just don't know if we will, because these are 2 cards that combo well with legendary cards. but one of them is a very slow card. At least this one produces you mana. This one, I think you probably run this in that deck anyways, just cause it produces the red mana. It's a land, and there's not a lot of cards that they're showing us that specifically needs mountains. So I think you run it, because why not? So that's what I think. We'll see. Let's go on to our Saga cards. We did get to show you one yesterday, but they've released a ton more today. So we're going to go over the first one, which is a white Saga enchantment, which is a 2 mana, one of which must be white. When you play it, you're scrying 2. Just for those who are unfamiliar with scry effects, you're looking at the top 2 cards of your deck, and you can choose any number of those 2 to put on the bottom of your deck, and then the other one on top of your deck, or none of them on top of your deck. It's just a way, scry, then a number. It's just a way for you to be able to set up your hand for success, especially if you took a risky hand, but even better if you didn't. So it's a really good card. Typically you see it in blue decks, so since they're really trying to get you to combo blue and white already anyway, I definitely see this working well. I don't think it being a white card takes away from its value, even with that effect. I think it's a great effect. You run it in a white-blue deck, and you're just doubling up that scry, setting up your hand, set yourself up for success, and you just win. So the other ability, for your next turn when you draw, you pop off the next effect, which is that you gain 2 life. Meh, I mean, it's a good card. Gain 2 life is nice. It does other things, which is good. My perspective on life gain is very particular. I think life gain only delays the inevitable. So I think that if a card is solely gaining you life, it's not really a good card. And so this effect, whereas by itself not so great, the other effects are what make it really good. So not bad. And it's 2 mana, gain 2 life on your next draw step. I mean, it's not bad. Okay, and the last one is what allows it to transform. You draw your next turn after that gain life effect happens. You come back to your turn, you draw, and then what this does is you exile it. You exile the enchantment. You return it back onto the battlefield, transformed under your control. So what is the transform card? Well, you flip it over, and it is the Hand of Enlightenment. It is a 2/2 creature human monk with first strike. So, I mean, it's not a bad card. I'm just not gonna lie to you. It's a slow card for it to come out and just be a 2/2 first strike. So I definitely think this is meant to combo with that card we saw earlier that lets you reduce the mana cost of your enchantments by 1. Because then it's a 1 mana, do all these cool effects, have a 2/2 first strike. Why not? But the problem is I don't see you playing it turn 2. I mean, even though, or even, you know, yeah, you'd have to play it turn 2 either way. So I don't see you playing it turn 2. Because I see you needing board control kind of early in the game, especially for a white-blue deck. I think board control is kind of your thing for that. And this gives that up for a couple of effects that happen first. You're sacrificing your first turn to scry 2. Not bad. Your next turn, you're just gaining 2 life and you're playing other cards, hopefully establishing board control. And then your third turn is when you're getting this 2/2 monk out. So I think it's probably a little too slow. But you know what? I'm still getting used to the transform cards. Maybe they have a different utility than what I'm thinking of. Alright, the next one I'm going to talk about is Machicchio's Reign of Truth. A 2 mana, one of which must be white card. When you play it, the first effect that pops off is target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Not bad. I think that you play this a little bit later in the game. And so my problem with that is I'm never a big fan of buffing cards, but in a white-blue deck, I could see the value since you're probably buffing a creature with flying. If you're not, though, and you're buffing up, you know, ninjas, I feel like without trample or without like the ability of being able to tap all your opponent's stuff, I think it just has to be comboed with something. So I don't see this as a 2 mana card. I see it as being a little bit more expensive because it requires the combo to really go off the way you want it to. So that's just how I see it. The second effect when you draw is the same as the first, so you actually get the same effect twice. So you just get to buff something else again and attack, which is not bad. But again, already had my opinion about just kind of the slowness of that. And then the last effect on your third turn is, again, what allows it to transform. So we flip it over, and it becomes Portrait of Machicchio. She is a human noble, technically a 0/0, but her ability is that she gets +1/+1 for each artifact and or enchantment you control. Yeah, just like the first Era of Enlightenment card we just talked about, I definitely think it's meant to combo with your card that reduces the cost of your enchantments by 1. You play out these Saga enchantments, you play out other enchantments for yourself and for your creatures, and so then you're just, everything's comboing together. So yeah, I guess maybe it's not really meant for a ninja deck, which, you know, I'm starting to realize as I'm looking at these cards, which makes me less excited about the cards because I want a ninja deck. So I'm looking at this and saying if I want to run a blue-white deck, I want it to be, you know, a ninja deck. So, and it could be that this is really meant for a white deck, but I feel like with scrying from the first card, I think it's meant to either, maybe it's meant to accommodate for the blue cards, because white doesn't have a lot of scrying, they're trying to give it more scrying, but without card draw to combo with scrying, then your scrying is all you're doing is you're setting up your next 2 turns for scry 2. And I'd rather just set up the card draw spell I'm about to cast, you know. So I think that you run it with the blue-white, but we'll see. So the next one has an epic name. It is a blue enchantment saga, which is that it is called Behold the Unspeakable. It is a 5 mana, 2 of which must be blue. And the first one, when you play it, the effect is creatures you don't control get -2/-0 until your next turn. A great thing to do before you are going to attack. Debuffing the cards, though, never something I'm excited about. I always feel like debuffing your opponent's cards are really to stop them from getting lifelink or death touch. I feel like it's really meant to stop their abilities from going off, because this isn't going to stop them from blocking. If they're going to block to stop you from getting through, they're going to do that anyway. So I don't know, it doesn't debuff their toughness. I think that this is for a very aggressive play, I guess is my take on it. So the second ability, when you draw a card, the next one that comes off is that if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand, draw 4 cards, otherwise scry 2, then draw 2 cards. That's a great effect. The card's worth, yeah, you know what, I think it's worth 5 mana for that effect, I feel like. You know, maybe I'm getting too excited about it, but the value, again, I mean, obviously you play it if you have 4 or fewer cards, if you can. I mean, it's a late game card anyways, it's 5 mana, unless you combo it with that card we talked about earlier where it costs 1 less, in which case it's 4 mana, even better. But by itself, 5 mana, wait until late game, you've got 4 or fewer cards, which in a blue deck, you're purposely making that decision to get down that low. You've got other card draw cards, you're purposely waiting for the effect to pop off. But you play it and draw 4 cards, great card. If you already have more than 4 cards, you don't need that much card draw, so scrying 2 and then drawing 2 is just, again, as I told you guys with the last card, I love being able to set up the card draw I'm about to play. This lets you do it all in 1 card, so that's perfect. And the last one allows it to transform. Vision of the Unspeakable. It is a technically 0/0 spirit. It is a flying trample card which gets +1/+1 for each card that's in your hand. That's a great card for a blue deck. I mean, I'd run this in a straight blue deck. It being a spirit combos well in a white blue spirit deck. I think this is a must for that. And I personally can't wait to show Eric this when we do this video on what'll be the 7th of February, where we go over all the cards, because I'm sure he has things to say. So then the next card we're going to talk about, it is called the Modern Age 2 mana card, 1 of which must be blue. The first effect when you play it is draw a card, then discard a card. Good effect. Second effect on your next card, you draw on your next turn, and it pops off the next effect. Same as the first. Second verse, same as first. Draw a card, discard a card. Still a good effect, just like it was on the first turn you played it. Worth the 2 mana, I think. So 2 mana, do this on your next turn also. Already a great card. So let's see what it transforms into on your 3rd turn. It turns into Vector Glider, a 2/3 flying spirit enchantment creature. I mean, it's a good card. I think that for 2 mana to get a 2/3 flying out would be a good card. You're paying 2 mana to do this in a couple turns, but the other effects while you're waiting to play this creature is already good enough to where it has... I'm a big value guy, so I definitely think, you know, this is the way to go in a spirit deck. I think this is I think it's a must run because it lets you do that cycling. It lets you draw a card, discard a card, draw a card, discard a card. You're setting up your hand, which I think is, in a blue deck, I'm planning 3-4 turns ahead, and this is great. I think it's a great way to change what blue is known for. Instead of just being to cancel out your opponent's stuff, I think it's really good to be able to just guarantee that you can play whatever you want to. I've set my hand up better than you possibly could have, so I'm going to win. I love that. It's good. It's another alternative way to play blue, and I like that. The next card I want to talk about is a Black Enchantment Saga, which is the first one I've seen so far from the set. Next card I want to talk about is a 2 mana black card, 1 of which must be black. Life of Toshiro Umezawa. So when you play it, you choose one of these effects. Either target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, or target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, or you gain 2 life. I like the utility of a choose effect. I definitely think it has a lot of use. I just wish that the first 2 effects were good enough to make me not just want to gain 2 life. In a black deck, you're doing a lot of things that maybe are making you lose life. If they're releasing more Phyrexians, you're probably losing more life. So I think you almost always gain 2 life, and I don't think that's that awesome. 2 mana gain 2 life. I get it, it's 1 mana for each life you're gaining, and that's not a bad trade-off. I just feel like it's slow if that's all you're doing for your turn on turn 2 to do that. So you're probably playing it a little bit later with other stuff. I don't know, just my first take on it. And then for its second effect, it does the same thing, so already I'm not excited. Getting 2 life passively is not bad. So you draw, gain 2 life. It's just that you spent your first turn to do the same thing, so as far as I can tell with this card. So I don't know. So let's see what it transforms into. That's what I really want to know. So it transforms into Memory of Toshiro. Is a 2/3 human samurai who, if you tap and pay a life, you add a black mana to your mana pool, but you must spend that mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. Well, see, now you're paying life to get mana, and you just played a... So I almost feel like it's basically trying to pay for itself. Like, it's almost like you gained life specifically to do this. You try to build up your life pool to be able to pay life every turn to gain mana, and for it to restrict how you spend that mana. I don't know, not excited about it. Not excited about it. It's specifically for an instant or sorcery spell. Can't really ninjutsu out with that then, can I? So, I mean, yeah, not excited about the card. Which is a shame, because it's the first human samurai, I'm just kind of like, meh, I'll pass. So, I don't know, we'll see. Maybe it sees more play than I think. So the next card, another really great name, I think, for the card, and the art is great for it too. It is a red card called the Shattered States Era. I think that's an epic name. It is a 5 mana card, one of which must be red. So it's a fairly expensive card off the bat just looking at it. And its first effect is that you gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste until end of turn. Very normal that you see with red cards. For 5 mana, definitely not worth it. We're going to have to look at the other effects before we determine the full value of this card, because that's a 3 mana card. That's what that is. It's act of treason is what it is. Or you play it with back in the day, your Conquering Mana Core, 6 mana, get it out, take control of target creature to the end of turn, untap it, gains haste. Or I can't remember what it was called, the Eldrazi spell that came out with Rise of Eldrazi, where you gain control of target creature, untap it, give it +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. I mean, so there's just a lot of cards out there for this. It's very typical for a red deck. They're all red cards that I just mentioned, so I see it. But for 5 mana, I don't see it. So let's move on to the second effect, see what that does. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay. So that's not bad, especially because I know I just said I don't like buffing creatures, but in a goblin deck, you just give all your creatures +1/+0. That's not bad as a passive effect. Again, not worth 5 mana, and even combo with the last card, not worth 5 mana. It would be better, again, so I just told you about a card that you would gain control of target creature, untap it, it gets +2/+0 and haste until end of turn. What sucks about this is that the last turn you just gain control of target creature until the end of that turn, and now you're buffing cards in your next turn. So you don't get to buff the card that you just took control of because you gave it back to your opponent. So, I just feel like it's a delayed response when it really should have comboed better. So let's see what it turns into. Maybe that's worth it. So it turns into Nameless Conqueror. Again, I love the name of this card. The art looks great. Looks like a spirit samurai. He's actually just a human samurai, though. He's a 3/3 with trample and haste. You have to buff it. I mean, you have a 3/3 with trample. So the haste is great, just like all your other goblins pretty much have haste. It's a samurai, so I feel like it's meant to be run with samurais and warriors and stuff. But it's a 3/3 for 5 mana that you wait for 3 turns for effects that you don't really care about. Yeah, I don't like the card. I think that's just my... I'll look at the other cards come out in the set, and we can talk about it. Maybe you guys have some different opinions. Love to hear it. But, for now, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Not a fan. So, moving on. Next one we're going to talk about is a Green Enchantment Saga, which is Azusa's Many Journeys. It's a 2 mana, one of which must be a green card. So the first one, when you play it off, you may play an additional land this turn. Great in a green deck. Love to see it. Already like the effect, except for one thing. Explore is a 2 mana card just like this. It lets you play an additional card, land card, just like this, but it also lets you draw a card, so you could draw into a land. For 2 mana, this card has half the effect of a good 2 mana card. Of course, it has other effects. Let's look at them, see if that makes it worth it. The next effect is you gain 3 life. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so already I'm happy with this enchantment. I don't know if I'd run it because it's a slightly slower card, because it doesn't let you get the draw card that Explore does. I mean, I see Explore getting a lot of play. Well, I play it a lot. That's what I mean to say. I play Explore because it at least replaces itself. I may not get that extra land out. I hopefully I combo my hand well enough to where I play it and then play the other land I was holding on to, and I get to get the card draw. Because I'm not wanting to draw into the land so much as I just need something that allows me to keep going, get mana advantage while maintaining hand advantage. That's my thing. Those are 2 advantages of the 4 you have in the game. So in my mind, I feel like this card is a bit too slow just because you're not getting the card draw. So I don't know. Not a bad card for the value you're getting. I just don't feel like it has the utility you need to be able to justify running it in a deck, because green's already running so well at this point with the sets already out. Green already is doing a good job. So what we're looking for are cards that are either going to improve it or change the meta of the green deck, I feel like. So let's see what it turns into. It turns into Likeness of the Seeker. It is a 3/3 human monk. Whenever Likeness of the Seeker becomes blocked, untap up to 3 lands you control. Now that makes this card worth it. Immediately, right off the bat, now I want this card in my green deck. Immediately, I may not have gotten to draw a card, but just having 3 lands on the board, I essentially now have 6 lands on the board, for all intents and purposes. Or I'm dealing 3 damage to my opponent every turn because they don't want me to have 6 mana. So either way, good card. I see this, and I know that it's meant to be buffed. You're meant to play it with enchantments and stuff, and you're meant to modify your creatures in the new green decks that they're trying to make you do. Yeah, I see it. I love it. Yeah. And I love what that shows is just how much the transformed effect on these cards can really make or break these cards. So, love it. All right, let's talk about the next green enchantment saga that they have, which is, well, I think it's going to be pronounced this way, Boseiju Reaches Skyward. It is a 4-mana card, and one of which must be green. When you play the card, you search the library for up to 2 basic forest cards and reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. Yeah, that's good. And I would like to say it combos with the last card we just saw, but I don't think you're playing this at turn 4 at least, and the other card was a 2-mana card that you kind of want to get out as soon as possible because you want to untap those lands. Because even if you're not untapping 3 lands, untapping just 2, because that's how much you needed to cast that enchantment we just talked about, untapping just 2 and having double that is already a good enough card. So, I wish this comboed with the last card. It's a bit too expensive to do that. And also, if on turn 4 you're still needing mana, I don't know. I feel like there's not a whole lot of big green cards being played right now, especially if you're meant to modify your creatures. If you're playing a modification deck, you're running a bunch of enchantments that are probably 3, maybe at most 4 mana. Like this one's a 4-mana enchantment. So if you're digging for forest cards at this point, the only reason I would want to dig is to get those lands out of my deck so I don't draw them. So let's see what else it does. So your next turn, it gives you this next effect of put up to 1 target land card from your graveyard on top of your library. See, this goes right back to the whole, well, now you're forcing yourself to draw a card your next turn, and it's a land guaranteed. So do you really need that land by turn 4? Especially since on turn 4, you played this card and you just got 2 forests into your hand. So what we're really saying is, on turn 6, do you still need to draw a forest? Because this effect happens after your 5th turn when you've drawn a card. You then put a land on top. So that means turn 6, you're telling yourself you need that forest card. I don't know if you do. I will say at least it lets you do target lands. So it can be a legendary land. It's a non-basic land. In that sense, I can see that. If you're playing against a land destruction deck, I can see that. But I don't have a lot of land destruction decks I've seen played against me. Don't know if they're really in the meta. But I haven't seen them. So I think it's very situational. In a side deck maybe so far. But we haven't gotten through the whole card. Let's see what it turns into. Branch of Boseiju. It is a 0/0 plant technically, but it has reach. What it does though is you get +1/+1 for each land you control. So all of the effects that you were just using at least goes to buff the card. But my issue is you can only block 1 flying creature. And if you're playing against a swarm deck and you just spent your 4th turn to get lands and your 6th turn to get lands, you spent 2 turns just to buff 1 card. I'm not a fan of that. I think that this is a slow card that can only block 1 flying creature coming through. It's an impressive blocker, don't get me wrong, but I think it's blocking a 2/2. That's what I think is happening. I think a 2/2 Spirit is getting blocked while the other 2/2s are getting through. That's what I think is happening. So I don't really think that it's that good of a card. I don't even think it goes... I think that you play it just for the enchantment effects. So We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's slow. Especially for a green deck. Green deck's one of the fastest decks you can play. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is the Dragon Kami Reborn, a 3-mana enchantment saga, one of which must be green. And it, for the first effect, allows you to gain 2 life, look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile one of them face down with a hatching counter on it, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. Don't know what a hatching counter is. I assume what it transforms into will tell us more, because its second effect is to do the same as the first effect. What does it transform into? Dragon Kami's Egg, a 0/1. Whenever Dragon Kami's Egg or a dragon you control dies, you may cast a creature spell from among cards you own in exile that have a hatching counter on them without paying their mana cost. Okay, well, you only have 2 of those, though. So, by this point, you have 2. You know, just let me look back at the effect. It's you gain 2 life, look at the top 3 cards library, exile one of them. It's not 1 or more, and you only get this effect twice. Yeah, so you got 2 cards, and you've, I mean, you've got to really know what's on top of your deck, and that's more of a blue thing. So, I don't know. Not really thinking this card is going to see a lot, I think. Again, I think it's probably just too slow, would be my problem with the card. So, and then we will look at the last card for this set that they've shown us so far, which is Teachings of Kirin, a 2-mana, one of which must be a green spell. So the first effect when you play it is that you mill 3 cards, you create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. Okay, not a fan so far. For the second effect, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Still not a fan. Let's see what it turns into. A Snake Monk, which I just think is awesome. A 1/1 Snake Monk that whenever it attacks, you get to choose an ability. Exile target creature card from a graveyard, and when you do, create a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token, or exile target non-creature card from a graveyard, and when you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. That's not bad. I think for 2 mana, the card would be worth it. The problem is it's 2 mana, wait 3 turns to play it. So, I don't know. It's definitely meant to be played in a... I'm starting to think this is a green, maybe white deck at this point. I think that this is a spirit combo with green, but I'm still not into it. I'm still like, even with the idea of you flooding the board with spirits, you've got red cards that are creating spirits, so it almost makes me think, is it supposed to be a green-red-white? Is it supposed to be a green-red? I can see green-red going well together, but to create spirits, when you're playing goblins to create spirits, and now snake monks to make spirits, enchantments to make... I'm not a fan of it, I think, but hey, maybe there's a way to build this deck. Maybe they release more cards later that tell us about how these play well, but I think overall there's a lot of cards that I don't really 100% get, I think. Or maybe I do understand them and they're just not great cards. So maybe tell me what you think. Like and comment on the video. But that's all the cards they've shown us for today. Join us next time. In the meantime, if you're just as excited about these cards as we are and you just want to talk about them, drop a comment. We can take a look, talk about them. And heck, if I'm wrong about something, yeah, maybe let me know so I can learn some stuff. So see you next time.